Well, welcome to session 2 of Seek. Thanks for coming back. I feel so honored that you decided to come back after session 1. We've called this talk, What's So Important About Jesus? And it has some interesting characteristics. It's a unique talk among Seek talks, which I'd love to tell you about to see if maybe it's your cup of tea would be to skip on to the next one. This is by far the headiest talk of all the Seek talks. Lots of ideas, concepts. I use mathematical models. We talk about old terms like sin or saved, all this sort of heady stuff. And what we found, as I think I mentioned last week, is that most people that we discover in Seek actually don't have that many heady questions. They actually more want to know, is there a God out there? And can that God be meaningful to me in a meaningful way? Yes or no? If it's yes, thumbs up, you win. If it's no, I guess, you lose and we go home. All the rest of Seek actually deals with those questions. So the next session is very how-to. How do people pray? How does that work? Does the Bible fit in at all, as we talked about? It's very how-to. So in one sense, you might wonder, why did you put this heady talk as the second one? We did it because there's actually a very specific question which many people who take Seek have, which would be helpful for them to think about a bit or address before moving on to all that how-to stuff. So if that's you, we wanted to make sure we didn't miss you, that you actually could feel free to move on to that how-to stuff. If it's not you and you feel like, no, I just want to get to the how-to stuff, by all means, feel free to skip right ahead to session 3. But we wanted to talk a bit about this so-called question of exclusivity, which is a real difficulty for so many people who take Seek, understandably. Jesus seems to say he's the way to God. There's a famous passage in John's Gospel where he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to the Father except through me. And it seems sort of unneighborly, because in Cambridge, Massachusetts at least, you can't get out of your house without meeting people from all over the world, from all different traditions. Are we supposed to be able to say they're all, quote, wrong and we're right? It doesn't seem right. So how do we get past that? So I want to talk specifically about what might Jesus have meant by that. Is that something that will actually open up relationship with the whole world for you, as I hope it will? Because the fear people have is that it will instead shut down relationship with the whole world. I think it's actually just the reverse, and I hope to make a pitch for you of how that's so. I want to start off, though, by a heady concept, actually a mathematical concept. I want to talk about 2 different kinds of sets. Imagine to yourself a circle. We're going to give the big name of a bounded set. But here's the thing about circles. You're either inside of a circle or you're outside of a circle. That's the only thing you really need to keep in mind. So I'm a man. If you're a woman, I'm sorry, you're outside of my circle. I don't mean to exclude you, you just are. I'm a Northeasterner. So if you are from another part of the world, I'm sorry, I have my own circle, you're on the other side. And so on until the circle can kind of go down to just us. So hold that thought. Circles, you're either in them or you're out of them. The second picture, the most important image, would be a dot, a really big dot, right in the middle of the set. People will call this a centered set. All that's important about the dot here is it's whatever holds the cohesion of the set together. And on this piece of paper with a dot on it, there might be a million other dots, which would be everyone else on Earth. Here the issue is not whether you are inside of something or outside of something. It's just about motion. Are you moving towards whatever is the center of the set, or kind of veering, going some other direction? So the center of the set could be whatever holds the group together, shared political beliefs or shared sports team affiliations, anything that holds it together. Well, for our purposes here, I kind of want to talk about how faith tends to work. So let's say in the center of the set would be God or Jesus for the purposes of this talk. The issue here would not be, is anyone inside or outside of any set? It's just, is there kind of the arrow, the motion of the dot moving towards or kind of veering off from what's in the center of the set? Under that theory, let's say I, as the guy talking about God here, let's say I am really close to the center of the set. I'm a foot away. And let's say there's somebody else who's 10 miles away, way the heck away. But right at this moment, their arrow, they're kind of moving a good direction towards the center, towards Jesus, and I'm having some troubles in life, and I'm kind of veering off to the side. Under this theory, the person 10 miles away is actually better off than I am at the moment. Now, I have some advantages by being so close. I can kind of have a clear view of the center in a nice way. But the only issue is kind of moving that direction helps. So you can see there's no in or out here. You could be a long way away. It's just kind of what's the trajectory of things here. Now, the reason I bring this up is because in terms of faith, I think this could help us think about Jesus in maybe an unexpected way that could actually open up relationship with the whole world rather than shutting it down. So let's go back to bounded sets just for a minute. In bounded sets, you're either inside of it or you're outside of it. most churches seem to see themselves in this way, and understandably so. They understand that they've got something in the circle of what they're doing to experience Jesus that is good. That's a good thing. And they're benevolent people, and so they want people who are outside of actually the circle of whatever their faith experience is to kind of jump into that pond, swim around, see that the water's great. It's a benevolent impulse. But I think what actually tends to happen in actual fact is that most of us have, of course, we all have bounded sets. We all live in communities. We all have things we like or dislike. Very few of us actually want to switch bounded sets. It feels like sort of a hostile act. So I think of, on a religious terminology, let's say you've got a bounded set we'll call Illinois Baptist. It's great. It's a wonderful Illinois Baptist community. It's just wonderful. And let's say you meet someone who's, say, a Bangladeshi Muslim. Well, for the Illinois Baptist to say to the Bangladeshi Muslim, jump on into our bounded set, you'll love it. You won't have to change a thing. Jesus is a part of it. It's going to be great. It's excellent. Might not be quite the whole truth. Really, the Bangladeshi Muslim won't have to change a thing? Their whole, how they dress, how they relate to the opposite sex, how they think about politics, their diet, almost everything would have to change. And usually the people in the bounded set don't quite realize that. They don't quite take that into mind, how difficult it is to cross a line in that sense. And that seems to set up some of the religious divisions we find on earth. Almost every religious group on the inside feels like, we're nice people. You know, we're not trying to do any harm to anybody else. And in fact, we're benevolent. We're kind of hoping that all the benefits we're feeling in our bounded set, other people could experience. What's wrong with that? And yet, it seems like that actually tends to set up lines. So all that said, I'm not by any means dismissing bounded sets as being great and wonderful things. I pastor a church, so I have my own bounded set. But I'm still trying to pitch a different view. I'm trying to pitch in this talk, what if Jesus fits better into the centered set model? And can that do a good gift for us? Can that hand us something that we're going to like in the end? I want to start by asking a big theological question. Is it then all that important whether Jesus regards himself as God, right? Because that seems pretty bounded. If he's saying, look, I'm God, does that mean everybody else who's not into that is wrong? Or maybe it's better and easier just to think of Jesus as a great moral teacher, as almost all religious traditions do. So for instance, as you read the Quran, Jesus is a character in the Quran, highly regarded, a very honored character in the Quran. Not God, that would be an overstatement, clearly, but highly regarded, a great prophet. Well, the only thing that seems to get us thinking about this is this question that he poses of what he came to do. I wonder if him even kind of pointing towards God, as he seems to do in the stories about him, have a strangely functional quality about what he can do. So he says he came, for instance, to, quote, save us from our sins. Now, again, I mentioned to you I was going to use some big theological terms. Sin, that's one that seems a little bit old school to many of us. It seems like something from the Middle Ages. We tend to thinking about people as sinners can seem a little bit judgmental. I'd kind of like to believe that you're doing the best you can to live the best life you can. I mean, you may have your problems and struggles, but you're trying. And that I'm trying, I'd hope you would think that I'm trying too. And rather than thinking of you as some sort of sinner, I'd like to think well of you, and I would hope you would think well of me. So maybe we would be advised just to trash this concept of sin. But Jesus is insistent, almost like, no, 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 no. This is really important. I actually came for this purpose. I really hope you'll get this, because this is meant to be a gift for everybody, not just for people in churches that are called, quote, Christian. This is a gift for anybody from any tradition, and I want to give it. It's really a big deal. Well, is it helpful, or is it just downbeat to think about sin then? How do we kind of work our way into it? I wonder if a way to think about it is to ask a big question about reality. What if, hypothetically, anything we think of as true, what if the whole universe itself is best described as relational? Because if the universe is relational, it seems to have big consequences. Now that goes against our first inclinations. So if we've ever, say, gone to school, it's easier for us to think of that truth is not relational. Truth is abstract. It's things you can test. It's things you can prove. So it's things that aren't dependent on a given person. It's things that are always true. They're abstract. We are in this room. We are not outside of this room. That's not a relational truth. That's just true. We are sitting on a chair. We are not, leaping up. That's a true statement. It's not relational. It's an abstract statement of fact. And yet, there's a lot of truth, right, that doesn't quite fit that mode. So I am married. I am married to a beautiful woman named Grace. Now, you might say, I just called her a beautiful woman. Can I prove it? Can I prove she's a beautiful woman? Well, when I say it, you don't hear me saying it requires abstract proof. You're saying to yourself, Oh, that's great. Dave regards Grace as beautiful. Good for him. He relates to her. He sees her wonderful qualities. They seem beautiful to him. And that's wonderful. So as he gets to know her, her beauty becomes more evident. And maybe you know her a little bit, or you might have met her, and you might say, I agree, she's a beautiful woman. But you would only say that because either you're being nice to me because I said it, or because you know her a little bit and she seems beautiful to you. So some truths at least seem to require a relational component that aren't quite things we can parse quite so easily. But what if we could even push that a little further? So I know very little about science. I famously got out of almost all of my high school science requirements, like chemistry or physics, didn't take either of them, because I found a little-known class in my high school with the name called science. And in science, I think we had to learn the periodic table. That was our big job. And for our midterm, I kid you not, we made fudge in the Bunsen burners. So it was it was a rigorous science thing. That said, I do run the SEEK program in Cambridge, Massachusetts, again, with all these highfalutin universities around here. And so I meet a fair amount of people who actually are, in fact, scientists. That's really what they do. And they tell me, who knew, there's this thing called quantum physics. And that quantum physics, as they hear me talk about maybe truth is relational, they tell me, oh, Dave, I think science actually could back you up on that, because quantum physics argues that to even observe anything in the world, the fact of our observation of it changes where it is. So our vantage point on things kind of creates an interactive universe. So maybe even truth at a deeper level is relational.